am Emma Martinez, 27, a trauma nurse in Houston, and the night I came home and my house key didn't work, I realized my father had made his choice, and it wasn't me. The shift at Ben Taub had been hell. Triple trauma code. One teenage boy didn't make it. My hands smelled like bleach wipes and hand sanitizer. My feet were sore from standing for 13 hours, and I hadn't eaten since a granola bar at 7 a.m. I remember thinking as I pulled into our driveway around 9:47 p.m. that I just needed 30 minutes to microwave the leftover chili, shower, and fall into bed. That was all I wanted. The porch light was off, which was strange. Dad always left it on when I worked late, even after Karen moved in. That little yellow glow felt like a signal that someone remembered me, expected me home. But that night it was darkness. I walked up the steps still in my navy scrubs, my name badge hanging crooked on my chest. The keys jingled in my hand. I stuck the one labeled home, the silver one with the chipped blue rubber tip, into the front door lock. It didn't turn. First I thought I had the wrong key. I pulled it out, double-checked it, and tried again. Nothing. I squatted down, peering into the lock. I tried turning it more forcefully. Still nothing. The air suddenly felt thick and wrong. I knocked. Hard. No one answered. I rang the doorbell. Waited. Nothing. My phone buzzed. I snatched it from my pocket, hoping it was Dad. But it wasn't. It was Karen. I hesitated, then answered. Emma, she said, her voice cold and flat. You don't live here anymore. What are you talking about? I said, my pulse quickening. Why doesn't my key work? We changed the locks this morning. Mark told you it was time to move out. My mouth went dry. No. He said I could stay until I closed on the apartment. That's in May. Well, she said sharply, plans change. Put him on the phone, I said, my voice rising. He's not available. Karen, I just got off a 13-hour shift. I haven't even eaten. That's not my problem, she cut in. You're almost 30, Emma. It's time to grow up. You can't freeload forever. I pay rent, Karen. I've been helping with groceries, I do the yard. This isn't a debate, she snapped. Don't make this harder than it already is. Then she hung up. I stood there staring at my phone, the screen now dark, reflecting my stunned face. I knocked again. Rang the bell. Pounded the door. Nothing. My hands were trembling. I turned slowly and sat down on the porch steps. The concrete was cold through my scrubs. My backpack slumped beside me, the zipper half open, stethoscope peeking out. I'd lived in this house for 15 years. I got my first period in the upstairs bathroom. I buried my childhood dog under the oak tree in the backyard. I helped repaint the kitchen cabinets after Mom died. And now I was sitting outside like a stranger, like a burglar who didn't belong. I checked my phone again. One new message. Dad. Please don't come back. This is better for everyone. That was it. No explanation. No apology. Just a final door slammed shut. A single tear slipped down my cheek. I wiped it away with the sleeve of my scrub top, then stood and walked back to my car. I sat behind the wheel, numb. The car smelled like old takeout and sweat. I leaned my forehead against the steering wheel and exhaled. Where was I supposed to go? Hotels were out of my budget. My best friend Janelle lived with roommates and had no extra space. My mom's sister Ruth lived an hour away, and we hadn't spoken in months. I didn't have a plan because I didn't think I'd need one. I spent that night parked 2 blocks away, under a flickering street lamp, hugging my backpack like a pillow. And as I drifted in and out of uncomfortable, cramping sleep, the only thing I could think about, more than the betrayal, more than the humiliation, was the silver house key in my bag. The key that no longer opened anything. The morning after I slept in my car, I woke up with my neck aching and a line of dry drool on my jacket sleeve. I sat up, disoriented, brushing off a crushed granola bar wrapper from my lap. My mouth was dry, my bladder full, and my phone was at 14%. I was parked in a CVS parking lot a few blocks from the house I used to live in. The streetlights had blinked off sometime before dawn. Now the sun was spilling gold over the tops of the strip mall buildings, turning everything an ironic shade of warm. I checked my phone. No messages from Dad. Nothing from Karen. Nothing at all. I drove to the nearest gas station, washed my face in the grimy bathroom, and bought a bottle of water and a stale egg sandwich using the last $6.40 I had in my checking account. The taste made me gag. By 8:12 a.m. I was at the hospital again. Not to work, I had the day off, but because I had nowhere else to go. The break room couch smelled like Lysol and exhaustion, and nobody questioned why I was there. Nurses crashing on off days was common enough. I kept my hoodie on and pretended to scroll through my phone, though I was mostly staring blankly at the wall. Janelle walked in around 9:30. She took one look at me and froze. "Emma? Girl, what are you doing here? You look like hell." I tried to smile. "Thanks. I feel like hell." She sat beside me, still in her scrubs, sipping a Starbucks iced coffee. "You working today?" I shook my head. "Karen locked me out. Said I don't live there anymore." Her eyes widened. "What? Since when?" "Last night." My throat tightened. "They changed the locks." "Didn't tell me." "Your dad let that happen?" I looked down at my lap. "He sent a text saying it was better for everyone." Janelle cursed under her breath. "You have to be kidding me. What are you gonna do?" I shrugged. "I don't know." She reached out, touched my arm gently. "You can't live in your car." "I'm not living in my car. I just parked in it overnight. One time." I said it defensively, even though I wasn't sure it would only be once. She gave me a look. "You know you can crash with me, right? It's tight, but I've got that futon in the living room. It's better than sleeping in a CVS parking lot." I opened my mouth to say no, to pretend I was fine, but what came out was, "Please. Thank you." Janelle smiled, then added, "Just don't leave your dirty socks on the floor. We're not that close." Despite everything, I laughed. That afternoon, I went back to the house to try one last time. The front lawn had been mowed. The curtains were drawn. My car wasn't even in the driveway anymore. Karen must have moved it. Or had it towed. I rang the bell. No one answered. I texted my dad again. "Me? Please, I just need to get my stuff." No reply. I waited. 10 minutes. 20. Finally, I opened the side gate and went around back, where the sliding glass door led to the kitchen. It was locked. The patio chairs were neatly stacked. There was a new doormat that read, "This house runs on love, laughter, and wine." Not once did I feel the urge to smile. I climbed over the side fence again, scraped my elbow, and returned to my car. Later that night, I moved into Janelle's living room. She made space in her tiny IKEA bookshelf for my nursing books. I folded my clothes into a plastic storage bin. My entire life reduced to what fit in my trunk. That night, I lay awake on the futon, listening to the hum of her old fridge and the distant whine of sirens outside. My silver house key sat on the side table. I picked it up, held it in my palm. Once it meant safety, family, belonging. Now it was just metal, cold and useless. A relic of a door that no longer opened for me. And I had no idea how many more would stay closed. 2 days later, I saw my dad. Not at home, not because he reached out, but by chance in the lobby of his bank. He was standing beneath the tall glass ceiling of the downtown Houston branch, shaking hands with a customer, his tie neat, his smile warm. He looked like the same man who used to make Saturday pancakes and tuck notes into my lunchbox. But he wasn't. I didn't go there to confront him. I was downtown running errands with Janelle, trying to open a new checking account since my old one, the one I shared with Dad when I was a student, had mysteriously been closed without warning. The teller told me they needed the joint account holder present to discuss the closure. So I walked into the bank. And there he was. My body reacted before my mind did. I walked up, heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. "Dad," I said. He turned mid-laugh and froze when he saw me. His smile collapsed. "Emma, I need to talk to you," I said, trying to keep my voice even. His eyes darted to the receptionist nearby. "This really isn't the place." "I don't have a place." "You made sure of that." He sighed and stepped to the side, toward a quiet alcove near the business services office. The smell of printer toner and lemon cleaner filled the air. "I just need to get the rest of my things. My clothes, my nursing license paperwork, my mom's bracelet." He looked uncomfortable. "Karen said she boxed everything up." "You let her box up my life?" "Emma, don't be dramatic." I blinked. "You locked me out. Without a word. You didn't even call." He rubbed his temples. It's complicated. No, it's cruel. His eyes hardened. Karen and I agreed this was the best path forward. You've been depending on us too long. You're an adult. You need to stand on your own. I was standing. I was saving. You said I could stay until June. Well, that was before your attitude became hostile. Hostile. I laughed, a short bitter sound. Because I asked Karen not to go through my mail? Because I told her not to throw out Mom's cookbooks. A bank manager appeared from behind a glass door. Mark, we've got the 10 a.m. conference call. He looked relieved. We're done here. No, I said. We're not. But he walked away. The receptionist gave me a look as if I were the problem, the unstable daughter causing a scene. I walked out of that bank with my fists clenched and my heart in pieces. On the sidewalk, the Texas sun baked the concrete, and I could barely breathe. That night, back at Janelle's, I sat on the futon and opened the single box Karen had finally agreed to leave for me at the side gate. It was taped sloppily, dented on one side. Inside were a few shirts, a broken hair straightener, a photo album missing half its pages, and my nursing license, creased and coffee-stained. Mom's bracelet wasn't there. Neither were my winter boots, my medical textbooks, or the birthday card from my grandmother I'd saved since I was 8. Just like that, everything that made up my space in that house was reduced to one careless box. And one voicemail I got from Karen later that night. Consider yourself lucky we even gave you that. Most people wouldn't have gotten anything. I didn't respond. I lay back on the futon, staring at the ceiling, one hand over my chest. I could still feel the weight of the bracelet that wasn't there, and the hole it left when they took it away. The next wave didn't hit me directly. It came through the family group chat. I had just finished a night shift, standing in line at a Panera near the hospital with a lukewarm hazelnut coffee in hand, when my phone buzzed with a notification. Growing Heart Family Growing Heart, a thread that had been mostly dormant since Christmas. At first, I thought maybe someone finally realized what had happened to me. That maybe my Uncle Greg or cousin Marissa had noticed my sudden disappearance from the house and the dinner table. Instead, I opened the thread to see a cheerful photo. Dad and Karen, smiling at a backyard barbecue, surrounded by twinkly string lights and a big shiny new sign that read, "Our home peaceful at last." Below it, Aunt Lisa had commented, "You two deserve all the happiness in the world." Two hearts sparkles, and Karen replied, "Thank you. It's been a difficult transition, but we finally feel safe and stable again. Boundaries matter." That word boundaries felt like a blade. I stared at it, my fingers trembling. I typed, "Glad you feel peaceful. Kicking your daughter out in the middle of the night will do that." Then deleted it. Instead, I scrolled through the rest of the messages. Uncle Rob sent a thumbs-up emoji. Cousin Brad posted a gif of clinking champagne glasses. Even my brother David, who lived 2 states away and barely replied to anyone, had written, "Glad you're finally getting a break, Dad." That one hurt worst. David hadn't asked me a thing. Hadn't even texted to check in. I typed again. "Nice to see everyone celebrating while I sleep on a futon in someone else's apartment." I hit send before I could stop myself. Silence followed. 5 minutes. 10. Then Aunt Lisa replied, "Emma, please don't stir the pot. This isn't the time or place." Cousin Brad added, "We all have to grow up sometime." And then a text from Dad outside the group thread. "This behavior is exactly why we needed space. I hope someday you'll understand." I didn't reply. I stared at the screen until my coffee went cold and the world outside Panera blurred into meaningless color. That night, Janelle came home to find me curled on the futon with a blanket over my head. I hadn't moved in hours. She sat on the floor beside me, resting a hand on my ankle. "I saw the group chat," she said softly. "Screw them. I didn't even say anything that bad." I whispered. "I just told the truth." Truth makes people uncomfortable, especially when they're the ones who caused the mess. We sat in silence for a while. Later I took the key, the useless one I still carried in my bag, and placed it on the windowsill of Janelle's apartment. I stared at it as the city lights blinked beyond the glass. That key had once meant entry, a place at the table, place to rest. Now it just meant exclusion. That week I started documenting everything. The text messages, the voicemails, photos of the house. I wrote it all down in a small notebook Janelle gave me. one with pink pages and "Do Something Brave" stamped on the cover. Not because I knew what I was going to do with it, but because I refused to let them write the story. I found out who my allies were the same week I discovered who never truly had my back. The surprise came in the form of Uncle Henry, Dad's younger brother, the quiet one who rarely said much at family gatherings except to pass the mashed potatoes. I hadn't spoken to him in over a year. But late Thursday evening, just as I was walking out of the hospital after another back-to-back shift, I saw his name light up on my phone. Uncle Henry said, "Hey Emma, I just heard from someone in the family group. Can we talk?" I called him back immediately, my hands still sticky from hand sanitizer, my hair tied up in a limp bun. "Hi," I said, cautious. His voice was warm, slower than I remembered. "I had no idea they kicked you out. No one said anything until I saw that post from Karen. I called your dad, but he just kept repeating that it was time, and that you needed tough love." I exhaled. "That's what they call it now?" "Listen," he said. "I've got a spare room in my place in Pasadena. It's not much, but it's yours if you want it." That offer hit me harder than I expected. It was the first kindness I'd received from blood family in days. "Thank you," I said, blinking fast. "That means more than I can say. But I'm staying with a friend right now. I'm okay. For now." There was a pause, then he said something that stuck. "If you ever decide to make noise about this legally, let me know. I've got a friend in property law." I hadn't even considered that. After we hung up, I sat in my car for a long time, staring at the steering wheel. For the first time in over a week, I didn't feel completely alone. But that feeling didn't last. Because the next morning, I woke up to a private message from Marissa, my cousin. We'd grown up close, sharing sleepovers and late-night chats about crushes and prom dresses. Marissa: "Hey, just FYI, people are saying you're making a scene in the group chat. Aunt Karen's really upset." I stared at the screen, then typed, "She locked me out of my house, Marissa." Her reply came fast. "Yeah, but like, you kind of put it out there. Couldn't you just have handled it privately?" "Handled it privately?" I typed, then deleted, then typed again. "Why are you more worried about her feelings than where I slept last week?" Marissa never replied. By Sunday, I'd been removed from the family group chat. No message. No explanation. Just gone. Janelle saw me staring at my phone again that night and tossed me a small tub of ice cream. "We need to detox you from these people," she said. "They're not family. Not the way family's supposed to be." I knew she was right. But it didn't stop the ache. That weekend, I went through the box Karen had given me again. I found a crumpled post-it note stuck to one of my old sweaters. It was in my mom's handwriting from years ago, and it said, "Don't forget, you are loved even when you forget it yourself." I folded it and slipped it into my wallet, because maybe everyone else had forgotten. But I wasn't going to. Not anymore. The first flicker of hope came unexpectedly, in the middle of a grocery run. Janelle had dragged me out of the apartment that Sunday afternoon under the guise of buying paper towels and oat milk. I hadn't left her place in 4 days, unless you counted walking to and from my car. My hair was greasy, I was wearing the same hoodie I'd slept in for 2 nights, and my phone was permanently flipped screen down on the kitchen counter. She handed me a shopping basket and said, "You're in charge of snacks. You used to care about snacks. Let's start there." I stood in the cereal aisle of the Fiesta on Dunleavy, clutching a bag of off-brand pita chips, when I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. Normally I wouldn't have answered, not anymore, but something made me pick up. "Hello." A clipped, professional voice answered. "Is this Emma Martinez?" "Yes." "Who's this?" "My name is Sasha Weller. I'm a housing rights advocate with the Greater Houston Legal Aid Center. You were referred to us by Henry Martinez." My throat tightened. "Yeah, Uncle Henry mentioned something." She continued, "I'd like to talk to you about your situation if you're interested." That night, we spoke on Zoom while Janelle sat on the other end of the futon, pretending not to listen but obviously absorbing every word. Sasha was sharp, kind, and to the point. She didn't sugarcoat anything. She asked questions. Did I contribute financially? Yes. Did I have any written lease or agreement? No, just verbal. Did I have any documentation? Receipts? Texts? Yes, I said. I have texts. I even have the message where Karen says, "You don't live here anymore." and another where Dad admits to changing the locks. Good, she said. That helps. She asked me to scan everything. Every receipt I'd kept, from groceries, from shared utility payments. Every screenshot. Every voicemail. Anything. I know it's not a guaranteed case, she said. But if they mishandled your tenancy, and especially if any of your belongings are missing or damaged, there's room for action. And if they accessed any shared accounts without notice, that's something else. After the call, I pulled the pink, Do Something Brave notebook out of my bag and flipped through it. For the first time, those scrawled pages felt less like desperate scribbles and more like evidence. Like proof I wasn't crazy. That night, Janelle helped me make a shared Google Drive folder and label each file. Every bill. Every photo of my old room. Every entry from my journal with dates. I used her scanner to upload my pay stubs and copies of my Venmo transactions labeled electric, groceries, and Karen's wine again face with rolling eyes. Felt weirdly empowering. On Tuesday morning, I printed the email thread where Dad had first told me, back in January, "You're welcome to stay here until you've saved enough. We're family, and that means something." I highlighted that line. Then I stared at it for a long time. The next day, I bought a small mason jar from a dollar store nearby. I decorated it with a label that read, "The Boundary Jar." Every time I stood up for myself, even in a small way, I dropped a coin inside. It wasn't for money. It was for memory. That week it only got 1 penny. But it was one more than I had the week before. The secret came out on a Thursday morning, tucked inside a manila envelope with my name scribbled on it in Karen's sharp, looping handwriting. It was raining. Not the kind that makes you curl up on the couch with hot cocoa, but the aggressive Houston kind, where the sky feels like it's falling and the gutters overflow in minutes. I had just come off a 6 a.m. shift, soaked from the knees down, my shoes squishing with every step as I got to Janelle's apartment door. Sitting on the mat was the envelope. No note. No return address. Just my name, Emma. I froze, staring at it. Janelle opened the door behind me and said, "Is that from your dad?" I didn't answer. I picked it up and walked inside, tracking little puddles across the floor. Inside the envelope were 4 items. A folded letter, written in Dad's handwriting. A check for $750. A printed property transaction record. And a sticky note that simply said, "Let this be enough." Janelle sat across from me on the futon as I read the letter. It was apologetic in tone but hollow in content. The kind of apology that's really a justification wrapped in a bow. He wrote, "I didn't mean for things to go this far. Karen felt uncomfortable with how long you were staying. I thought you'd bounce back faster than this. I didn't think you'd react this way. Please use the check for a deposit on a new place." Then, in smaller handwriting, "Let's try to move on from this." I handed the transaction record to Janelle. She squinted at it, then her eyes widened. "Emma, this says your dad sold the house 3 weeks ago. Fully transferred title to Karen's name only." I blinked. "What?" "He signed away the full deed. Didn't even keep a joint claim." I stared at the paper. My chest tightened. My mom owned half that house. They bought it together. "Did she leave a will?" Janelle asked. "She died when I was 16. Dad said everything was taken care of." The check suddenly felt like hush money. I sat in stunned silence, gripping the paper until it crinkled in my hands. "He sold everything," I whispered. "To her. And didn't tell me. The house I grew up in. The hallway with the chip tile I always tripped over. The bathroom where I taped up my first nursing school acceptance letter. Gone. Given away." For the rest of the day I couldn't stop shaking. That night, I took the check and burned it in a ceramic bowl on Janelle's balcony. It turned to ash fast, the edges curling like dried leaves. Janelle watched me with wide eyes. "That could have covered your deposit." I shook my head. Not if it came with strings. Not if it meant saying this was okay. The next morning I printed a photo of my mom, the one of her at the stove, laughing with her apron on sideways, and taped it to the inside of my pink notebook. Then I wrote underneath in Sharpie, "I am not disposable. I am not a guest in my own life." And for the first time since this whole thing began, I felt something unfamiliar rise in my chest. Not just anger. Not just grief. Resolve. And that feeling deserved a penny in the boundary jar. The next step wasn't about emotion. It was about strategy. I spent that entire weekend turning my pink notebook into a timeline. A weapon. With Janelle's help, we laid out every incident, every message, every call, every transaction, every lie, and created a 3-column spreadsheet with dates, sources, and supporting files. We weren't just documenting pain anymore. We were building a case. Sasha from Legal Aid called Monday morning. "We're moving forward," she said. "You have enough to justify mediation." Mediation. Just the word made my stomach clench. I didn't want to sit across the table from my father. I didn't want to hear Karen say my name again. But I also didn't want to be silent. We filed the paperwork that same day. It was nothing dramatic, just a PDF filled with dates and signatures. But to me it felt louder than anything I'd said so far. 2 days later, I emailed the documentation to the legal center. Scanned pay stubs, annotated screenshots, a copy of the property transfer, and the written estimate for damages from the missing items Karen had failed to return. That included my winter coat, $189. Target brand, irreplaceable because of the scarf Mom sewed into the lining. 2 nursing textbooks, $340 combined. My mother's silver bracelet, technically sentimental, but appraised at $210. Total claim, $739 plus the legal implications of improper eviction without notice. Sasha prepped me for what to expect. Don't expect tears. Don't expect closure. Just be prepared to state your side, clearly and calmly. I nodded even though my insides felt like spaghetti. The mediation date was set for a Thursday afternoon. Downtown. Neutral ground. I wore my scrubs to remind myself of who I was. Someone who helped others, who stayed calm under pressure, who knew how to stop bleeding. I needed that version of myself in the room. The building was cold, the kind of office space that smells like carpet cleaner and filtered water. The conference room had a long table, fake ficus trees, and a glass wall facing the hallway. I sat on one side with Sasha and a mediator named Brandon, early 40s, gentle voice, law degree framed behind him. Then they walked in. Dad looked smaller than I remembered, thinner. Maybe tired. Or maybe just guilty. Karen was in a cream blouse and heels that clicked loudly against the floor. She carried a tote bag with a gold chain strap and sat across from me like she was at a brunch reservation she didn't want to attend. Brandon explained the rules. This was confidential, non-binding, and each party would have a chance to speak. Sasha went first, laying out the basics. Illegal eviction, lack of formal notice, missing belongings, and coercion via check delivery. Karen rolled her eyes. When it was my turn, I spoke clearly. I lived in that house for almost 15 years. I contributed to bills, took care of yard work, paid rent. I was told I could stay until June. They changed the locks without warning. I lost access to my things. Some of those things belonged to my late mother. They're gone. I didn't cry. Dad looked down at his hands the whole time. Karen interjected only once, saying, "She never had a lease." Sasha responded, "That doesn't nullify verbal agreements or shared tenancy behavior. And the law recognizes what's called a tenant at will under Texas statutes." That shut her up. After 90 minutes, Brandon called for a break. Outside in the hallway, Sasha said, "You're doing great. You're calm. You're credible. That's what matters." Back inside, they offered a settlement. Return of 2 items, an apology letter, and a signed agreement that I wouldn't pursue the missing property further. I didn't accept. "Not yet. Add Mom's bracelet to the return list," I said. "Or we go to small claims." Karen scoffed. "We don't even have that anymore." But Dad looked at her sharply. "She kept it," he said quietly. There it was, the first fracture. I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. I just added another penny to the boundary jar when I got home, and circled the word leverage in my notebook twice. The meeting that broke everything wide open wasn't with lawyers. It was in my father's kitchen. By some strange twist of strategy or maybe guilt, Dad agreed to meet me face to face after the mediation. No Karen. No Sasha. Just him and me on a Sunday afternoon, 2 days after the hearing. He said it like a favor. "If you want to talk. Just us." I almost said no. But part of me, the part still clutching at hope like a frayed sweater, said yes. I drove to the house just before noon. The driveway was freshly swept. The flower bed looked pruned. The American flag out front was new. He opened the door before I even knocked. "Emma," he said, as if my name still fit in his mouth. I stepped inside. The kitchen looked smaller, or maybe I'd just grown. The cabinets were freshly painted white. The table was different. No sign of the old chairs Mom picked out. He gestured to a stool at the island. I sat. The marble was cold under my palms. We stared at each other for a long moment. Then he said, "I never wanted it to be like this." I didn't respond. He cleared his throat. "Karen thought I was being too soft. She said letting you stay was enabling you. And you listened to her," I said. "Not me. Her." His jaw clenched. "You were slipping. You stopped talking to us. You snapped at her. I was working 70-hour weeks. I was exhausted. And she threw out Mom's things." He looked at me. "You never forgave me for remarrying." I blinked. "You didn't just remarry. You rewrote the house. You let her erase Mom. Then me." His hands curled around a coffee mug. "I was trying to keep the peace. You kept the peace by destroying my place in your life." He looked at the table. And then I said something I hadn't planned to say. "You know she used my social to open a credit line, right?" He looked up. Fast. "What?" I took out my phone and slid it across the counter. I pulled my credit report. "There's a $3,000 charge from a Macy's card in my name. Opened 3 months ago. I never applied for that card. But it used my full name, birthday, and the address of this house." His face went pale. "She swore she didn't." "She did. And you know it." He stood suddenly, pacing to the sink, then back again. "Jesus Christ, I told her not to." He stopped himself. And there it was. Confirmation. I leaned forward. "You knew. You didn't stop it. I didn't know it was in your name. But you knew she did something. You knew it wasn't right." He looked away. And that's when I saw it, the deep, gnawing guilt in his eyes. It was brief, but it was real. And for once I didn't feel like the broken one in the room. He sat back down slowly. She said it was a mistake. That she meant to use her own card. That it autofilled. I laughed. Bitter. Autofilled my social security number? He didn't respond. "Dad, I needed you. Not her. You. And you threw me out like a tenant overstaying her lease." He flinched at that. I reached into my backpack and pulled out the pink notebook. I opened to the first page, the one with Mom's photo taped inside. "She wouldn't have done this," I said softly. "She would have fought for me." He looked at the picture. His lip trembled. And then he whispered, "I miss her every day." "So do I." The room felt like a wound. He looked up. "What do you want from me, Emma?" I stared back. "I want you to stop pretending this was okay. I want you to admit what you let happen. I want the truth." And for once he didn't argue. He just nodded. And that, more than any legal win, felt like the first real crack in the wall between us. When I got back to Janelle's that night, I dropped a penny in the boundary jar. Not because I won, but because I finally told the truth, and he couldn't look away. The twist didn't come in court or through some grand revelation. Came at Target. I was in the checkout line grabbing laundry detergent and granola bars when my debit card got declined. Twice. The cashier smiled politely and said, "Do you have another card?" I did. A backup credit card I barely used, so I paid with that and walked outside feeling nauseated. It wasn't payday. I hadn't gone on any spending sprees. Something was wrong. I sat in my car, pulled up my bank app and froze. There was a $1,800 withdrawal labeled Mobile Transfer Karen M. And another one. Best Buy $947.22. What the hell? I called the bank immediately. After 20 minutes of transfers and holding, a rep confirmed what I already feared. Someone had added Karen as an authorized user on my account. According to our records, the rep said, her name and email were added 2 months ago via mobile banking. But I didn't do that. I said, nearly yelling. "I understand, ma'am. If you believe this is fraud, we'll have to open a case. But you'll need to come into a branch and bring ID. I hung up and stared at the screen. I hadn't even known she had my login credentials. But then I remembered last fall during a tech meltdown, Dad had helped me reset my banking info from his computer. Karen had been in the room, watching. My blood went cold. I drove straight to the bank branch where my dad worked. I didn't care how unhinged it looked. I walked through those glass doors and asked to see the manager. Not my dad. His superior. 10 minutes later, I sat in a beige-walled office with a woman named Deborah, who took one look at the screen and frowned. "This is highly irregular," she said. "An unauthorized user can't be added without dual consent unless it's a joint account." I told her it wasn't joint. She stared at the monitor, lips pursed. "This may have been an internal override." My jaw dropped. "You're saying someone at this bank approved it manually?" She didn't answer. But her silence said everything. Later that night, back at Janelle's, I told Sasha. She was furious. "This changes everything. This isn't just eviction. This is financial abuse." We gathered the evidence and filed an official fraud complaint. I also froze my account, opened a new one under a different name structure, and password locked everything down like Fort Knox. But the real twist came 2 days later. I got a call from Deborah. "I don't know if I should be telling you this," she said, "but your dad, he overrode the account protocol." I felt the floor shift beneath me. He what? He used his managerial clearance to bypass dual verification. Said it was a family emergency. My heart dropped. So he knew. He let her in. I'm sorry, Emma. That night I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I sat at Janelle's kitchen table and printed every transaction, every screen capture, every document Deborah sent me. Then I highlighted one line in red. Manual override authorized by Martinez's dad's initials. His fingerprint. His betrayal. When I told Sasha, she said, "This goes beyond mediation now. You have grounds for a full civil suit, and possibly criminal charges." But that wasn't the twist. The twist came when I went to confront him and Karen was gone. Completely. The house was empty. A for sale sign on the lawn. Curtains drawn. Porch bare. I checked her Instagram. Gone. No profile. No photos. No wine quotes. Vanished. Called Sasha again. And 2 days later we got the confirmation. Karen had cleaned out 2 more accounts, this time ones tied to my dad's name, and disappeared. And now he was the one filing a fraud complaint. That was the twist. The man who let me sleep in my car, the man who told me I was too much, had just been taken by the woman he threw me away for. And somehow I didn't feel triumphant. I just felt tired. And validated. And suddenly very, very clear on who I never wanted back in my life again. Everything came to a head in the tiny conference room of a community legal center, 4 blocks from where I used to go to ballet lessons as a kid. Dad was there. He looked older than he had 2 weeks ago. Not just tired, deflated. His shirt was wrinkled, his tie slightly askew, like he hadn't had anyone to straighten it before leaving the house. The man who once balanced spreadsheets and life insurance plans like clockwork now sat across from me. Fingers twitching, eyes heavy. I didn't feel sorry for him. Not anymore. We were there to sign the formal agreement. A full civil settlement, mediated with the help of Sasha and 2 other attorneys. No court, no public trial, but a binding document. The price of closure. The document listed in clear legal language. A return of $3,287 in restitution for fraudulent charges made in my name. An admission of improper eviction without notice. A written acknowledgement of my verbal tenancy arrangement. And a signed agreement that my mother's bracelet, once considered misplaced, would be returned to me immediately, with photographic verification of the item. I read it line by line. Then I looked at my father. He didn't say a word. "Do you have anything to add?" Sasha asked. He hesitated. "I didn't know she'd go that far," he said quietly. "Not the credit stuff. Not the accounts. But you helped her open access," I said. "You watched her take over and didn't stop her." He nodded once slowly. "I thought she loved me," he whispered. I stared at him, my stomach flipping. "She loved control," I said. "You gave her that. You let her erase everything that made us a family. Starting with Mom. Then me. That was the hardest part. Saying Mom. Saying the word in front of him." His lip twitched. "She never liked that I still had pictures of your mother up." I let that sit in the air. "You replaced her," I said. "And when she started erasing the rest of us, you just helped her." I didn't know how to stop it. "No," I said. "You just didn't want to." We signed the documents in silence. The sound of the pen scratching the page was deafening. Then Sasha passed me a small padded envelope. Inside it was the bracelet. Silver. Simple. The one my mom wore every Sunday. I turned it over in my hand. The clasp was slightly loose, the way it always had been. A tiny E was engraved on the inside. A birthday gift from when I turned 12. My breath caught. For a second I could almost smell her perfume, orange blossom and tea. I stood. He looked up. Emma, he began. I shook my head. I'm not angry anymore, I said. I'm not even sad. But I'm done. I don't need anything else from you. Not forgiveness. Not family. I've got what matters. He nodded again, slower this time. And I walked out. Back into the Houston heat. Back into the sun. The bracelet on my wrist shimmered in the light like something alive. Back at Janelle's, I dropped the final penny into the boundary jar. The jar was half full now. But my life, mine, truly mine, was finally full enough. The confrontation didn't come in a courtroom or mediation room. It came at the school gymnasium, of all places. A month after the settlement, I got invited to speak at a career day panel at my old high school. A last-minute call from a counselor who remembered me from my internship days. She said, "You're a real example of grit. The students could use someone like you." I almost said no, but something in me wanted to go back. Not for revenge, not to flaunt survival, but to reclaim a part of myself. I wore my new navy scrubs, the soft ones with my name embroidered on the chest. I curled my hair. Janelle insisted on doing my makeup that morning. "Let them see the version of you that came through fire," she said. The gym smelled like old wood, bleach and sweaty optimism. Folding chairs were set up in rows and a banner read, "Build your future. Career Day 2025. I stood next to a firefighter and a tech recruiter from Dell, waiting for my turn. And then out of the corner of my eye, I saw him. Dad. He was standing near the back of the room, half hidden behind the bleachers, not on the guest list. Just watching. For a moment time froze. He wasn't supposed to be here. We had signed everything. Closed the loop. I'd said goodbye. But there he was, the man who threw me out, sat silently across from me while I cataloged everything he'd taken, and let Karen rewrite my life. He saw me, and didn't look away. My heart thudded once. Hard. But I didn't flinch. I stepped forward when they called my name and took the mic. The gym echoed with every word. "I'm Emma Martinez," I began, "and I'm a trauma nurse at Ben Taub. But more than that, I'm someone who had to learn. The hard way. That family isn't just who you're born into." The students leaned in. I told them about the night shifts. About staying calm when everything is chaos. About finding strength when no one shows up for you. And what it means to show up for yourself. I didn't mention Karen. Or Dad. Or Court. But I said, sometimes the people closest to you will choose silence over truth. Comfort over fairness. When that happens, your job isn't to make them see you. It's to see yourself. I ended with a smile. A real one. The applause was loud, echoing off the high ceilings. When the panel ended, I turned to look at the bleachers again. He was gone. And I didn't chase him. Outside, I sat in my car for a long moment, bracelet cool against my wrist. Then I opened the glove box and pulled out the silver house key. The one that started it all. I walked back into the school, down the hallway lined with lockers, and slipped it into the time capsule display beneath a glass case. Class of 2015 legacy items. It sat there, nestled between a pair of track medals and an old band t-shirt. Not mine anymore. But not forgotten. That night, I came home to Janelle frying onions in the kitchen. The apartment smelled like garlic and music. I poured us both a glass of wine and raised mine in a quiet toast. "To beginnings," I said. "To boundaries," she replied. We clinked glasses. And the sound echoed more beautifully than anything from the past. The fallout didn't hit all at once. It crept in slowly, like smoke from a fire already burned out. A week after the career day event, I moved into my own apartment. It was a tiny one-bedroom in Montrose, 2 stories above a dusty bookstore and directly across from a coffee shop that made lavender lattes too strong and too expensive. The floors creaked. The water pressure was mediocre. The paint peeled slightly in the hallway. It was perfect. The first night I slept there, I lay on a brand new mattress, no frame yet, with boxes still stacked to the ceiling and nothing but a Target lamp on the floor. And for the first time in months, the silence felt safe. No Janelle's futon springs creaking. No Karen's voice behind a closed door. No memory of footsteps waiting to lock me out. Just me. And the echo of healing. I didn't realize how much I'd been holding my breath until I finally exhaled into that space. But the pain didn't vanish. It showed up in small moments. Reaching for the phone to call Dad after my first shift at the new hospital wing. Seeing a family at a diner. A teenage daughter laughing with her father over pancakes. A forgotten voicemail from David, my brother, asking if I wanted to talk, weeks too late. I didn't reply. Not yet. Grief, I learned, doesn't always roar. Sometimes it tiptoes in during ordinary errands, like the day I opened a drawer and found the charger to the old electric toothbrush I'd left at Dad's. It meant nothing. It meant everything. I held it in my hand for 10 minutes before throwing it away. One night, I walked the 3 blocks to the bayou after work. Houston's skyline shimmered in the distance, and I sat on a bench watching the water move slowly under the bridge. A father and daughter walked past me. He was holding her science project, a solar system made of foam balls, and she was babbling about Jupiter. He wasn't even looking at his phone. And I wept. Not loud. Not messy. Just quietly, with tears tracking down my cheeks in a way no one noticed. Because there, in the dark, I was mourning the father I thought I had. The childhood that was gone. The version of me that still believed love was unconditional. But the mourning passed. Like a wave. And what stayed was something steadier. A knowledge. A new shape. I went home, lit a candle, and took out the boundary jar. It was half full now. Pennies, buttons, a ribbon from Janelle that said, "You did a hard thing." Each piece a reminder that I hadn't just survived. I'd chosen myself. Over and over. I sat at the small kitchen table, wrote thank you on a card, and addressed it to Janelle. Then I looked around my apartment, the uneven rug, the framed photo of Mom on the shelf, the fridge humming quietly, and realized, no one could take this from me. Because I built it. I earned it, and I finally believed I deserved to be here. The final truth came not in a courtroom or a confrontation, but in the form of an old letter. I found it tucked inside one of Mom's cookbooks, the ones I thought Karen had thrown out. Somehow one had made its way back to me. A yellowed paperback with flour still stuck between the pages, hidden in the last box I hadn't unpacked since moving in. I was rearranging the kitchen shelves, trying to make space for a thrift store toaster, when the book fell open on its own, and the letter slipped out. It was addressed to me. The handwriting was unmistakably hers. Delicate, loopy, ink slightly faded. My heart caught in my throat as I unfolded it, fingers shaking. Emma, if you're reading this, I guess I'm not there anymore. And I'm sorry for that. But I want you to know something. Your father loves you in his way. It may not always feel like it. Sometimes love wears fear like armor. Sometimes people forget how to say the things they mean. He gets scared. He gets small. But you're so big. So full of light. Don't let anyone, not even him, shrink that in you. If life ever gets hard, and I know it will, promise me one thing, stay soft. Not naive, not weak. But open. You were born with the kind of heart that breaks and keeps beating anyway. That's your gift. Use it. Love you forever, Mom. I sat down on the kitchen floor and let myself cry. Big hiccuping, gut-level sobs. Not just for her, but for me. For everything I had lost. For everything I'd clawed back. That letter rewrote everything. Because it told me something no one else had been willing to say. My dad's weakness wasn't my failure. His fear wasn't my responsibility. And Karen's cruelty was never mine to fix. Gave me back my story. The next day, I wrote a letter of my own. Not to send but to seal. Dad, you taught me how to ride a bike. How to solve for X. How to make perfect pancakes. You also taught me what silence can cost. What happens when you don't stand up for the people you love. But I'm still grateful because in losing you I found me. And I'm finally someone I'm proud to be. I folded it, tucked it into the same cookbook and placed it on my kitchen shelf, spine out alongside the others. That night, I lit a candle and sat on the couch with a mug of tea. I turned off my phone. I didn't need validation. I didn't need noise. The truth had arrived. Not with rage, but with clarity. And in that silence I realized, I didn't need to be loved the old way anymore. I just needed to be seen. And finally I could see myself. I didn't expect peace to feel so quiet. Not dramatic. Not cinematic. Just quiet. Like the first morning I woke up without checking my phone for new wounds. Like sitting in my kitchen and sipping coffee that wasn't rushed. Like the silence of a life no longer trying to win anyone back. 2 months had passed since the settlement. Since the bracelet came home. Since I told my father without rage or begging that I was done. In those weeks the rhythm of life began again. Slow, intentional. I went to work. I paid my bills. I bought a bookshelf from Facebook Marketplace and spent a whole Sunday alphabetizing my books. I called Janelle just to hear her laugh. I joined a free journaling group at the community center down the block. I wasn't back to normal. But I wasn't trying to be. One Saturday I found a tiny craft fair in a park near Buffalo Bayou. I wandered past booths with homemade candles and beaded earrings. But what caught my eye was a table of hand-stamped metal pendants. One of them said, "You belong here." I picked it up and held it in my hand. The woman behind the table smiled. "That one's been waiting for the right person." I bought it for $14. Cash. No hesitation. When I got home I opened the boundary jar, my quiet archive of the hard choices I'd made, and gently poured the contents onto the coffee table. Pennies. Buttons. A ribbon. A folded quote Janelle once scribbled on a receipt. All the tiny, tangible proofs of self-worth. I added the pendant to the pile. Then I took the old silver house key, the one that no longer opened anything, and placed it in the center. It didn't hurt anymore. Because now it meant something else. It meant closure. And growth. And the truth that sometimes the door you get locked out of is the one that sets you free. I picked out the pendant, tied it onto a thin leather cord and put it around my neck. Not as armor, but as a reminder that I belonged. Here. In this life. In this quiet. In this self I rebuilt. As the sun dipped below the skyline, I opened my pink notebook one last time. The one that started with evidence and ended as testimony. And on the final page I wrote, "Some families break you. Some rebuild you. Sometimes you have to become both." Then I closed it. And I was done. Not broken. Not bitter. Just whole.